Good morning, students. Yes, today we had finished the second chapter on history. Today we start political science. Okay, and let me just start by saying that all your books have this. That is, your CBSE books have this Indian, the preamble of this Indian Constitution. That is the Constitution of India, and we must go through it once before we start the book on political science, because you would find that these are the ideals which somehow or the other would keep coming in all the chapters that we study in this book and the subject, that is political science. Because irrespective of the fact that whether we would be studying about Sri Lanka or whether we study about Belgium or any other country in this book and in the succeeding chapters, but you would understand that all the countries, their politics are being shaped by the fact that all of them somehow or the other are striving to achieve uh, the ideals which are there in our preamble, which is mentioned here. And these are the same, these are universal ideals, students. You have to understand these are not something which is very unique to the Constitution of India. Things like justice and liberty and equality, fraternity, these are universal values, these are universal ideas. Every country, every society, every civilization strives to achieve them, and would remain an incomplete one. It would never be able to realize the potential of its people unless these ideals, these values are not respected within that community or that society, and they don't strive to achieve it, though it's a very difficult task to do, and it is a never ending process, literally. So let's just give it a quick reading. The Constitution of India Preamble. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Sovereign, essentially, you must have studied it in class 9, essentially a country which is free and is free to take its own decisions. It's as simple as that. Socialist would mean, you want to have the welfare of every section of the community within your country, whether poor, rich, everyone is equal for you, and you want that the poor should not be leading the life of which is only about deprivation and only about uh, poverty and starvation and that kind of stuff. Secular, definitely, that every religion is free. You are free to practice any religion within the country, and there is no preferential treatment that is given to any other religion based on the fact that that particular religion is practiced by such and such number of people. Democratic republic, of course, we have a democracy, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political. This is something which is again common to all the almost all the countries on the planet. Liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. Again, something which is a universal ideal. Equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. Guys, fraternity here, essentially, in one word, if I can explain it in one Hindi word, it would be bhaichara. Everyone, you all for one, one for all. We are That is basically caring about each other, right? And in our constituent assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do solemnly adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this constitution. Students, you have to again understand that there were a lot of countries who had achieved and who had gained independence much before India did. And notable ones being, of course, United States of America, then of course France, and all these countries were definitely free much before India got free in 1947. So naturally, these ideals, as I just mentioned, they are universal ideals. So these ideals and these beliefs, these aspirations was already being manifested in their respective constitutions and their law books. And you have to understand that Indian constitution has heavily been drawn from, we have rather, to put it this way, we have taken the best practices from a lot of different constitutions from around the world. And as we go through succeeding chapters, we would study that. But coming to right now about preamble, you have to understand that preamble has been taken. The first, the preamble was used, was in the Constitution of United States of America. So we have taken our preamble from the Constitution of United States of America. Now let us come to the chapter. Yes, the chapter that today we would be doing is power sharing. Okay, where different we would be talking about how the power is shared among different sections of the government institutions, and how it is done, what is the dynamics that goes about in that power sharing. Now, in this chapter we resume the tour of democracy that we started last year, so you must have studied it in class 9. That means we noted last year that in a democracy all power does not rest with any one organ of the government. An intelligent sharing of power among legislature, executive, and judiciary is very important to the design of a democracy. In this and the next two chapters, we carry this idea of power sharing forward. We start with two stories from Belgium and Sri Lanka. Both these stories are about how democracies handle demands for power sharing. The stories yield some great conclusions, general conclusions about the need for power sharing in a democracy. Students, power does not rest with any one organ of the government. Now, students, what it is essentially, and it is divided into legislature, executive, and judiciary. Students, you have to understand that for historically, when you read about history and historically, whether whatever might have been the culture or civilization, power used to be wielded only by the king was the supreme, the emperor, the king, the queen, they were the supreme ones. All the power rested with them. Whatever they said, whatever they decided was the law. Law books didn't matter. The last word was always with the king or the ruler. Now all that changed, but definitely all that change did not happen in one night. It was very, very an evolutionary change where generations and centuries were taken to reach to a certain level where we are now today. Even today we find that there are a lot of limitations and a lot of gaps that need to be filled, but yes, it has been a very long journey, and that is what we are going to look at. And for different countries, their situations have been different ones. Like for example, India has had a different kind of struggle, US had a different kind of struggle, Japan would have had a different kind of struggle, then the countries in Africa, they had a different one. Latin America, all of them, different cultures, different tradition. Now, you cannot aspire to make Afghanistan, you cannot have the democracy in Afghanistan looking like the democracy in Germany. Not about the economic prosperity that we are here to compare, but the point is the culture in Afghanistan would be a completely different one. They would be striving for a different level of parity within their society, different level of fraternity, and different extent of if you talk to them about all that secularism, it might not work within their community because they would be only worried about the Islamic identity, unlike India, where we would be very, very particular about, and we would be very fond of our secular credentials. So that is what the point is. And so let us today look at the cases of Belgium and Sri Lanka. Belgium which happens to be right in the northern part of the globe, and Sri Lanka right at the southern tip of the globe. So let's see the two contrasts, not just in their geographies, but also in how they have handled their own challenges of power sharing. Now, Belgium is a small country in Europe. You guys will have to actually read this pretty, seriously. Belgium is a small country in Europe, smaller in area than the state of Haryana, that is our Haryana. It borders with France, Netherlands, Germany, and Luxembourg. It has a population of a little over 1 crore, about half the population of Haryana. So that's where the similarity ends. Belgium and Haryana, it is, there's absolutely no comparison at all. The ethnic composition of the small country is very complex. Of the country's total population, 59% lives in the Flemish region. Flemish region essentially strengthens areas around Brussels and the areas which primarily speak Dutch and speaks Dutch language. Another 40% of the people live in Wallonia region and speak French. Remaining 1% of the Belgians speak German. So in the capital city Brussels, 80% of the people speak French while 20% are Dutch speaking. So guys, it's almost like, say, in the capital of Uttarakhand, Dehradun, um, it is like a situation where 80% of the citizens of Dehradun would say to be speaking Haryanavi or Rajasthani, and only 20% of the citizens know how to speak probably Kumavi or Garhwali. So it is that kind of situation. So naturally, you can understand if the capital of a country, let's say the Uttarakhand is a country, and in the capital, only 20% of the people speak the national language, and rest 80% speak an entirely different kind of a language, which is a foreign one, like I said, a Haryanvi or Rajasthani. So it is bound to create certain complications, and they're bound to be frictions, and that is what we are going to look at now. The minority speaking French community was relatively rich and powerful, uh, and that is 20% of the population only speaks Dutch, as I just said, and 80% of them speak French. And the French, that is in the population wise, they are very affluent, rich, and powerful. That is, they have been very influential in the political and the economic life of that country. This was resented by the Dutch speaking community, who got the benefit of economic development and education much later. So this led to tensions between the Dutch-speaking and the French-speaking communities during 1950s and 1960s. The tension between the two communities was far more acute in Brussels. Brussels happens to be the capital of, yes, Belgium. Brussels presented a special problem. The Dutch-speaking people constituted a majority in the country, but a minority in the capital. So let's compare this to another situation. Sri Lanka is an island nation just a few kilometers off the southern coast of Tamil Nadu, that is India, and it has about 2 crore people, about the same as in Haryana. Like other nations in South Asia, Sri Lanka has a diverse population. Naturally, all the countries here have an enormous amount of diversity, not in just terms of being a different cultural group, but in terms of religion, in terms of language, everything. The majority social groups are the Sinhala speakers, that is 74%. Students, you'll have to pay attention, otherwise you'll just lose track. And the Tamil speakers, that is 18%. Among Tamils, there are two subgroups. Okay, now uh, two subgroups. Tamil natives of the country are called Sri Lankan Tamils, that is 13%, and the rest whose forefather came from India as plantation workers during the colonial period are called Indian Tamils. Okay, we shall continue tomorrow. Thanks.